These days, unfortunately, I don't really have to explain why I have a face mask. 2020, right? And as far as it's looking right now, probably 2021 as well. But you may be wondering why I have a mask on in a candle making video on my channel. And that is a good question. Well, I live in Kansas City. I've lived in Kansas City my whole life, and I'm a die-hard Kansas City Chiefs fan. So unless you've been living under a rock for the last couple of years, or you're not a football fan or a sports fan of any kind, then you probably know that the Kansas City Chiefs won the Super Bowl this last year. Then you probably know that the Kansas City Chiefs are the current Super Bowl champions. If you know all of that, then you also probably know who Patrick Mahomes is. If not, Patrick Mahomes is the quarterback of the Kansas City Chiefs, and it's widely accepted that he is the best overall player in all of football. And at such a young age, it's really incredible. And he's setting new records pretty much every week, and he has been for the last couple of years. And he's a really great guy and great person off of the field. Okay, so I know, where am I going with this, right? Just stay with me. Well, the reason I bring this up is that Mahomes was the NFL League MVP in 2018, and he's the reigning Super Bowl MVP from this past year. MVP as in Most Valuable Player, which is the top award that an individual can win in the NFL. Well, today we're going to be talking about a different kind of MVP and how it applies to candle making. And to be honest, that was the most clever connection I could think of to start this video. So there you have it. Hi everyone, my name is Wade Thomas. I'm the owner of Black Tie Bar and Candle Company. As always, a big shout out and thank you to all of my current subscribers for being here. I appreciate you as always. And for everyone new here, this candle making channel is dedicated to making melts, making candle, and making money. We cover it all in this channel. So if you are interested in learning more about making candles, making wax melts, and the business side of things as well, then I would encourage you to subscribe as well. Give this video a like, hit subscribe, hit the bell notification, and let's dive in. So what exactly do I mean by MVP when it comes to candle making? Well, we're not talking about the most valuable player. We're talking about minimal viable product. Now, this is a term used in business in general, and it can vary industry to industry. But today we're going to talk about how this applies to candle making and how it can benefit you. And so that is the first question, is who does this benefit? Who does this concept apply to? So it applies to new candle makers and also current candle makers who just have another idea. Maybe a new product line, a new label, a new scent, a new jar, anything like that. So in short, it really applies to pretty much every candle maker. But to back up a little bit, let me more clearly define for you what minimal viable product is. A minimal viable product is a basic version of your final product that allows you to collect valuable and reliable information and feedback from customers with limited energy. So what does that mean? So essentially what that means is you create a product that's kind of your base level of a product. You haven't fine-tuned all the details. You don't have it perfect the way you want it to be in a year from now, but it's a basic, complete version of your product that is good enough to solicit feedback from your customers. And the goal is to do this with limited personal investment as far as energy goes, and also financial investment. So what are 4 ways that using a minimal viable product in candle making can benefit you? Well, 1, it allows you to test a new idea. Maybe you have an idea for a new fragrance or a new jar type, or maybe you're considering different ways to bundle some of your products together. Maybe you're working on a new label. What if you're working on new branding for some kind of new niche product line that you're coming up with? These are all ideas that you can test using a minimal viable product. Those are all different examples of testing an idea with a minimal viable product. And we'll go into a little bit more details and defining minimal viable product here in just a minute. But those are some examples of things that you can test with an MVP. Number 2, you can use the MVP to test whether or not your product resonates with your target audience. So perhaps you already have a target audience, you already have a niche, you have a brand and a reputation. So this applies both to new candle makers that don't quite know what their niche is yet and they're trying to find it, as well as candle makers who've been doing this for a while. They already have a target industry and a target market, but now they want to release a new idea, a new product, and they want to see how well that new product is going to fit with their current target audience, their target consumers. Well, an MVP allows you to get that product out there to them quickly and with low cost and get some feedback, to solicit some of that feedback from them. Or is it well received? Do they like it? Is it something that I should pursue, or should I save my money and maybe work on a different idea or tweak this idea, right? So it allows you to determine whether your new product or new idea is going to resonate very well with your target market. Number 3, you can use an MVP to test your pricing models. So this is really, really beneficial for new candle makers who are still trying to determine what type of price to set. You're going to get a lot of information and feedback that varies widely from other candle makers on what price to set your candles at. And the reason is everyone's in different markets. Depending on what part of the country or the world you're in, your prices might differ vastly from one another. It also depends on the type of wax and oils you're using, the jars you're using. There are several, your branding, your niche. Do you have a focused niche that you know you can price your candles a little higher because something about your candles is hyper-focused to a specific niche? Or are you more selling to the general? You want to sell kind of a general line of candles that the average consumer would find on a shelf. It's not necessarily targeted to a specific niche. Your goal is to sell more and more volume, right? So there are so many reasons that prices will vary from business to business and candle maker to candle maker. So the best way to come up with your best pricing is to use your own independent research. And one of the tools to help you do that research is the MVP, minimum viable, almost said most valuable product, minimum viable product. And so it can allow you to test your pricing. You've got your new candle. You want to send this out to a test group or to a small portion of your test target market. And let's see how the pricing does. Start somewhere, kind of use your educated best guess by some other market research and some other tips from other candle makers and see how that price does. And then you can adjust your pricing periodically to different markets and to different areas and gather that information, see how sales do, elicit feedback. And the idea is to see through this minimum viable product how well your pricing is working for your product. So it doesn't have to just be about how well someone likes your product. It can also be about how much they like your pricing. And then number 4 is just general feedback. These days, reviews are found online so easily across so many different platforms that your candles and your products are going to get ratings. It can be star ratings, it can be simple comments and reviews, it can be likes and dislikes, whatever it may be. That's all a type of general feedback. And the goal with an MVP is that you can put a product out to the market and start gathering some of that early feedback before you spend too much money and too much energy on a product that you find out is really not getting the feedback you were hoping for. It allows you to save that time and save that money and invest it elsewhere, tweaking the product or making a new one. And so again, those are 4 different benefits, 4 different ways that you can use a minimum viable product to help you with your candle business. Those are all the reasons of why, but we really need to talk a little bit more about what the MVP really means so that it's properly understood and properly utilized. So the best way to do that is to break it down into the individual terms. Again, it means minimum viable product. Well, we're going to work backwards, and we're going to start with the P for product. Obviously, to have a minimum viable product, you have to have a product. The reason we're starting reverse is this is the given. This is the easy one. You have to have a product. You cannot just pitch an idea and expect to get the same kind of results from an MVP type scenario. To gather the type of information and feedback that we're talking about here, that we're hoping to guide us in the right direction, it can't be just an idea. Really, this can't be just a poll that you post on Facebook or an email you send out to your audience. This has to be a product, not just an idea. So the step 1 of a minimum viable product is you got to have a product. And again, working backwards, we'll go to the V, viable. Now this is an important one. By viable, the product has to be sufficient. This means that all the important parts of your product are there and complete. For example, sending out a minimum viable product does not mean to not test your candles, because that is a safety matter. That is a safety concern, and you're just asking for a lot of problems if you go that route. So always test your candles. That is part of a viable product. Safety and performance are both part of a viable product. What you're looking for with an MVP when we talk about viable is that something that checks all the boxes for a typical candle. Your wax, your wick, good fragrance, proper burn characteristics, and safety. You've got to have those for a viable candle. You might be wondering, well, then what's left? I mean, if I'm going to go that far, I've already made my complete perfect candle. No, you could evaluate the level of scent throw, for example, that your customers are getting. If they're all complaining that it's a little too weak, then you could work on fragrance throw, right? Some of your customers may complain a little bit about the aesthetics of your candles, the way it looks, maybe the top of your wax, the texture, maybe the way it's looking in the jar, maybe it's the color. Those are not requirements for a proper candle. Those are more opinionated, let's say. right? And so you can get that kind of feedback from your customers as well. And then again, we also talked about pricing earlier. That can be part of determining what an MVP tells you about your product. Labeling, we talked about that earlier. Your labels and your branding could tell you a lot. In fact, that's one of the more common reasons that we see a lot of MVPs go out, is that you're trying to get some feedback on your overall look of the candle, right? More than anything. So at this point, now we have our viable product. So we've got your candle or your melt that checks all the boxes to make a typical candle or melt. Okay, that's your viable product. And then the minimum, the M part of this for minimum, comes in at, you need to be able to do this at the lowest amount of effort possible. And by effort and energy, I mean, candle making isn't easy. We all know that. So there is some effort you have to put into it. The idea behind a minimum viable product is do the least amount that you have to in order to get that base product ready to go, to start getting feedback, to start sending it out to test groups, right? So don't break the bank on buying a ton of raw materials for a product that you don't quite know is going to work yet. Before you've done a lot of your ample testing, before you've gotten feedback from customers, before you know your price and you know where your final direction that you want to go in. You don't want to spend too much money at this part of the process. It's just too early. And the same thing, not just for money, but also for your mental health. Like we all know candle making is frustrating at times and it can be exhausting at times. And so spare yourself some of your own anxiety by just slowing down and just realizing, telling yourself, look, I'm going to do what I need to get this product ready to get out the door for testing and for feedback. I want to create a product that my customers can give me true, real feedback on, but I don't need to spend too much time worrying about details. I don't need to have perfect labels at this point. If my colors are off, they're not quite exactly what I want, that's fine. You have time to figure that out. Have you figured out your pricing yet? You're going back and forth on a couple different price ranges. Don't worry about it. You can figure that out later. Again, the point of a minimum viable product is to get a sufficient product out the door for the entire purpose of collecting valuable information, reliable feedback from your target base. That's the point. Listen, we all want to hit the ground running as fast as we can. We all want to get to that finish line, that end goal, and sometimes before we've even barely started. That determination and motivation is what got most of us started candle making in the first place. So I understand that. We all understand that we have a lot of drive and determination to get to where we want. But sometimes getting to where you want means slowing down and pacing yourself a little bit. Sometimes it means stepping back to see the big picture and making the necessary steps to reach that end goal, breaking your end goal into action items. And one of these first steps, one of these first action items for all candle makers should be thinking about their MVP. Now, not all candle makers, if you've already been in the candle making industry for a while and you've already got a process and you've already got your products in place and things are humming along, you might not be in a position right now. You might not be in a place right now to use a minimum viable product. You might not need one at the moment. But if you're considering a new idea or a new product, that's a perfect time to consider using the minimum viable product strategy. And for brand new candle makers, I would highly encourage you using this because it's going to cut down on your own time and energy and costs early on if you follow this model. This model of using an MVP varies from industry to industry. It's going to differ. What it means will be different in every type of business industry. And so these are just some suggestions of how to use it for candle making. So my advice is just to simply get started. You don't have to worry about every little minute detail early on. Trust me, I was guilty of that. I've talked about it in some other videos, and I'm going to talk about it in some future videos as well. One of my biggest regrets early on, or things that I would change early on, I should say, is that I wasn't focused enough when I first got started. I was trying to do way too many things in a short amount of time, and I was also trying to worry about way too many details at once. I was just getting bombarded by myself. It was too much, and sometimes you spread yourself thin doing that. So, step back, slow down, pace yourself, and start by selecting your products, getting them sufficient and viable, and then get them out the door. Get them to family, friends, anyone that you trust can give you some honest feedback. And then for all you other candle makers that are already humming along and running, if you have a new idea, a new product you want to launch, my suggestion is just not to overinvest in that until you've had a chance to test the waters. You already have a target market, which is great. So you're ahead of the ball. You're ahead of the curve here. Create some samples, create some of these new products, Get them in the hands of your customers and let them give you that feedback. They're already your customers, so we know they like you. So we know that they already like your base products, and so now they have the opportunity to let you know how they like or do not like this new product, and they'll tell you. They'll be honest with you, and that's the great thing about an MVP is your customers are your source of valuable information. Your customers literally are telling you what they want. So get started, test your ideas, gather feedback from your customers, and you'll be on the path to success. The Kansas City Chiefs have found their MVP. Have you? Thanks for watching.